addressed at any point. Before we begin today's hearings, I want to take a moment to acknowledge the absence of a valued member of our subcommittee. We are mourning the loss of our friend and colleague, Congressman Turner. Sylvester's decades of dedicated public service to the people of Houston and his contributions to this nation and Congress will be remembered as part of his lasting legacy. My thoughts and prayers are with his family, especially his daughter and grandson, as they grieve his passing and honor his life of service. Also want to thank the gentleman, I want to welcome the gentleman from Louisiana, Mr. Carter, to the subcommittee. Today's hearings will assess the current state of U.S. travel security and infrastructure, evaluating the readiness of airports, ports, and border entry points to manage large influxes of international travelers, while ensuring that security measures, technological advancements, and operational processes meet future needs. I now recognize myself for an opening statement. Good morning. I want to thank everyone for being here today, especially our witnesses, as we take a closer look at how the United States is preparing to welcome the world over the next few years for significant international events. Beginning this summer, the United States will step onto the global stage by hosting the FIFA Club World Cup. This tournament will feature elite professional clubs from around the world, such as Real Madrid, Manchester City, Inter Miami FC, my hometown team, and will take place at select venues throughout the United States. This event will provide an early opportunity to stress test our travel systems, infrastructure, and security coordination ahead of even larger events on the horizon. In 2026, our country will host the FIFA World Cup with matches played by national teams in cities across the nation, and I am thrilled that this includes my home city of Miami. At the same time, we will celebrate America's 250th anniversary in July 2026, followed by the Summer Olympics and Paralympics in Los Angeles in 2028. When I was mayor of Miami-Dade County, I witnessed firsthand just how much planning and hard work goes into ensuring these major events run smoothly. As a member of Congress, I intend to do all I can to make sure that these international events are safe for millions of Americans and those traveling here who are planning on attending. These events are more than just celebrations or competitions. They are major opportunities to show the world what America stands for and what we can achieve. If we get this right, the payoff could be enormous. According to the U.S. Travel Association, we could generate nearly $95 billion in economic activity and welcome over 40 million international visitors. That will only happen if we plan ahead, invest wisely, and make sure that the travel experience in the United States is smooth, modern, and secure. Right now, we have work to do. A recent report from the United States Travel Association makes it clear that while the United States remains one of the top destinations for international travelers, we now rank last among the top travel destinations when it comes to national planning and leadership. Long waits for visas, outdated airport technology, and staffing shortages at our ports of entry are slowing us down. These problems are not just frustrating, they could cost us jobs, investment, and global influence. This is why I support President Trump's recent executive order creating a White House task force focused on the 2026 World Cup. This kind of coordination is exactly what we need. It brings the right people to the table and sends a strong message that the United States is serious about being ready. I'm currently working on a bill that would take this step further by creating a federal task force to focus on all major international events occurring in the United States over the next 4 years. That includes the World Cup, America's 250th, and the 2028 Olympics. We need to make sure every agency involved is working together and that our policies and resources are aligned. We also need to think about security. Big crowds and high-profile venues make these big events targets. That includes threats from drones, which are becoming more common around stadiums and public gatherings. We need to make sure agencies like DHS, TSA, and state and local law enforcement have the tools and coordination they need to stop these threats in the planning stage long before that they can cause harm. We should take this opportunity to make long-needed reforms to our travel system. We need to make the system more thorough and effective while still being welcoming to legitimate travelers. That means better technology at airports, shorter visa wait times, and making sure that we have enough officers at our ports of entry. The world will be watching, and with the right vision and coordination, the United States can set the global standard, not just for security, but for innovation, hospitality, and safety. I look forward to hearing from our witnesses about how we turn that vision into the reality. And now I recognize the ranking member, the gentlewoman from New Jersey, Ms. McIver, for her opening statements.
Good morning, and thank you to our witnesses for joining us today, and thank you to Chairman Jimenez for holding today's hearing. I, too, want to join in on just expressing our condolences and sympathy to Rep. Turner's family who passed away, who was a part of this committee, as we continue to pray and keep his family and his friends and his close colleagues in our thoughts. So definitely join us in that and sending well wishes to his family. The travel and tourism industry is a vital part of the U.S. economy. In November 2021, President Biden signed the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act into law, providing a $1.2 trillion investment in American transportation and infrastructure. In December 2022, President Biden signed an omnibus spending package into law, funding pay raises and an expanded collective bargaining framework for TSA employees. These historic investments have helped spur continued growth in U.S. travel and tourism and helped secure our transportation networks. In 2024, travel in the United States produced an economic output of $2.8 trillion and supported more than 15 million American jobs, and record numbers of passengers traveled through TSA security checkpoints. To continue to grow the U.S. travel system and prepare for upcoming international events, any sane administration would continue to invest in our infrastructure, update our security technology, and support our federal workforce. Unfortunately, President Trump and Republicans in Congress are doing the exact opposite. Take, for example, making investments in cutting-edge security technology to fund new CT scanners and other equipment at TSA checkpoints at the necessary scale and pace. Congress must stop using passenger security fee collections as a slush fund and return that money to TSA. But instead, Republicans are considering increasing passenger security fees and using that money to help pay for tax cuts for billionaires, according to a document showing their reconciliation plans. Republicans want to charge airline passengers more and then put the money in billionaire pockets. The passenger security fee was created to help fund TSA and prevent another 9/11, but Republicans care more about giving tax cuts to billionaires. That's despicable. Let's turn to workforce issues. Transportation security officers are the backbone of our transportation security system, as they screen millions of passengers and pieces of luggage every day to keep our skies safe. Yet, over the past month, President Trump and Secretary of Homeland Security, Kristi Noem, have taken the first steps in dismantling the professional aviation security workforce we have worked so hard to build over the past 2 decades. On March 7th, Secretary Noem ended TSA's 7-year collective bargaining agreement and dismantled union rights in a political and illegal move to advance President Trump's union-busting agenda. I am glad this move is being challenged in the courts, but in the meantime, it undermines the TSO workforce just as it had finally stabilized after decades of high attrition. Worse yet, the termination of TSA's collective bargaining agreement may pave the way for Project 2025's goal of privatizing the agency, an effort Republicans in Congress are already trying to advance. Privatizing more than 400 airports and over 50,000 screening officers would throw the entire aviation security system into chaos and return us to the pre-9/11 model that failed to prevent the largest terrorist attack in U.S. history. Democrats will fight tooth and nail to prevent Republicans from sacrificing our national security at the altar of corporate greed. Unfortunately, the problems the Trump administration is creating for travel and tourism industry go well beyond TSA. In 2024, the International Trade Administration reported a 9% increase of international visitors to the United States. Under the Biden administration, U.S. tourism was booming and open for business. However, in just 2 months since President Trump took office, he has managed to throw that all away by detaining tourists, attacking allies, and tanking the economy. The list of countries that have changed their advisories to warn travelers to the United States of potential risks is growing longer by the day. That list now includes the United Kingdom, Germany, Norway, Ireland, the Netherlands, Denmark, Finland, Belgium, and Canada. Canadians who visit the U.S. more than anyone are now canceling their trips as flight bookings from Canada have dropped by 70%. Since Trump took office, several travelers trying to enter the U.S. have been turned away or detained for days or weeks with little to no explanation. A French scientist scheduled to attend a conference in Houston was turned away reportedly because his personal device contained opinions criticizing Trump's research policies. A Canadian citizen was put in a jumpsuit and chains and detained for over 2 weeks as she legally went through the process to obtain a work visa. A German tourist spent more than 6 weeks in a detention center, including 8 days in solitary confinement because she was traveling with tattooing equipment. Through these cases and others, Donald Trump is sending the message that visitors to the U.S. may be arrested without explanation. Trump is sending a message that the United States is closed for business. Trump's policies put at risk trillions of dollars in tourism spending and millions of American jobs. Let me be clear, if you aren't, even from watching the news today, Donald Trump is tanking the economy. I look forward to discussing with our witnesses how the dire situation will impact our national security and the success of upcoming high-profile events like the World Cup and the Olympics. Thank you, and with that, I yield back.
Thank you, and I recognize the ranking member of the committee, the gentleman from Mississippi, Mr. Thompson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and let me welcome our witnesses on the panel today. I'm glad the subcommittee is examining the state of U.S. travel system ahead of high-profile international events. The outlook for the World Cup, the Olympics, and other major events set to be hosted in the United States over the next few years is dire. In just a couple of short months in office, Donald Trump and his Republican lackeys have done tremendous damage to the U.S. travel and tourism. People visiting the United States can no longer be confident that they will be treated fairly by our government. Just last week, a renowned mixed martial arts fighter and coach trying to visit the U.S. for a seminar was detained upon entry, sent to a federal detention facility, and ultimately sent back to Australia, all without little explanation. If this is how we treat foreign athletes and coaches visiting the United States, one can only imagine how the World Cup and Olympics will go. This is just one of the many instances of the Trump administration inflicting unnecessary trauma upon foreign visitors. The cruelty is the point. Donald Trump apparently does not want foreign visitors to visit the United States, even though travel represented $2.8 trillion of U.S. economic output in 2023. The impact of Trump's chaotic and undefined detention and deportation policies is already apparent. Canada, the United Kingdom, Germany, Ireland, Norway, Finland, Denmark, Belgium, and the Netherlands have all updated travel guidance for people visiting the United States to warn of potential for detention or discrimination. Airline bookings from Canada, which provides the most visitors to the United States by far, is already down 70%. The impacts of this loss of international travel will be devastating to local economies. In 2023, more than $1.3 trillion in travel spending contributed $89 billion in tax revenues to states and communities across the country. More than 15 million American workers are either directly employed or heavily supported by the travel industry. Some of those workers are also facing more direct assaults from the Trump administration. Last month, Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem issued a memo to strip TSA employees of their union rights and rescind their existing collective bargaining agreement. Transportation security officers screen millions of passengers every day to protect air travel. For many years, the TSA workforce was plagued by low morale and high attrition. In 2022, President Biden signed into law an omnibus spending bill providing pay raises and funding an expanded collective bargaining framework for TSOs. Those measures have had a dramatic impact on TSA's ability to carry out its security mission as attrition has dropped in half. Undoing this progress is dumb, cruel, and illegal. The Secretary cannot unilaterally rescind a binding legal contract. I hope the courts will put a stop to this negatively political madness. In the meantime, I'm proud to have reintroduced by bill the Rights for the TSA Workforce Act, which would provide TSA workers with full collective bargaining rights and a fair pay under Title V of the U.S. Code. Now is the time for members of both parties to stand up against Donald Trump and push back against his cruel and foolish policies. Donald Trump is putting America last. The U.S. travel and tourism industry will be among the Trump administration's first casualty if we do not change course quickly. Thank you again to our witnesses for joining us today to discuss this critical challenge. I yield back, Mr. Chair.
Thank you to Ranking Member. Other members of the committee are reminded that opening statements may be submitted for the record. I am pleased to have a distinguished panel of witnesses before us today on this critical topic. I ask that our witnesses please rise and raise their right hands. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you will give before the Committee on Homeland Security of the United States House of Representatives will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Let the record reflect that the witnesses have answered in the affirmative, and thank you, and please be seated. I would now like to formally introduce our witnesses. Mr. Geoff Freeman is the President and CEO of the U.S. Travel Association, the leading advocate for the $1.1 trillion U.S. travel and hospitality industry. Mr. Freeman is a seasoned association CEO with a proven track record of building successful organizations that unite members' interests, grow members' values, increase revenue, and unlock growth opportunities. Prior to joining U.S. Travel, Freeman was president and CEO of the Consumer Brands Association, the trade association for America's $2.1 trillion food, beverage, and consumer products industry. Mr. John Gruen is the CEO and executive chairman of Fortem Technologies, a tech company that provides artificial intelligence-enabled airspace awareness and counter-drone solutions to defense, law enforcement, and commercial customers. Previously, Mr. Gruen was a corporate business development and strategy lead for Lockheed Martin. Prior to joining Lockheed Martin, Mr. Gruen was a Navy SEAL officer where he served in increasing leadership positions in Operation Iraqi Freedom and Operation Enduring Freedom. He is currently a Naval Reserve captain and has commanded unmanned air systems and technology innovation units. John received his Bachelor of Science degree from the United States Naval Academy and received his Master's of Business Administration from the Haas School of Business, University of California, Berkeley. Dr. Everett Kelley is the National President of the American Federation of Government Employees, which is the largest union representing federal and D.C. government employees. He began his first term of service as national president in February 2020, was elected to another term during the 42nd National Convention in June 2022, and was re-elected during the 43rd National Convention in August of 2024. Dr. Kelley has been a member of AFGE since 1981. He worked at Anniston Army Depot and retired from there after 30 years of service. I thank each of our distinguished witnesses for being here today. I also would like to offer the following letter from the Airlines for America for the record, without objection. So ordered. And I recognize Mr. Freeman for 5 minutes to summarize his statement. Mr. Freeman, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman Jimenez, Congresswoman, Ranking Member McIver, Ranking Member Thompson, Congressman Crane, I appreciate the opportunity to be with you today. I'm Geoff Freeman, President and CEO of the U.S. Travel Association, representing all aspects of the $2 trillion travel industry, airlines, airports, theme parks, hotels, destinations from coast to coast. And I want to thank you at the outset for your appreciation of the travel industry and the impact that it has. Travel is a vital economic engine, contributing nearly $3 trillion annually and supporting more than 15 million jobs across the United States, more than 10% of our nation's workforce. Travel strengthens America's global standing, encourages business and cultural exchange, and generates significant tax revenue. In 2024, international visitors alone contributed $181 billion to our economy. But we can't count on this continued success without investments and reforms. Our infrastructure is failing to keep pace with the increasing demand for travel. For example, the Transportation Security Administration screened more than 3 million travelers on 2 occasions last year. By 2028, we're projected to see 100 days per year with that same volume. Our systems, from security to customs to air traffic control, are outdated and not prepared for this surge. It's not just about inefficiencies, it's also about global competition. Countries like China, India, and Saudi Arabia are making rapid advancements to their travel infrastructure, and we risk falling behind if we don't act swiftly. The next decade presents a tremendous opportunity. Major events like the 2026 World Cup, America's 250th anniversary, and the 2028 Olympics are expected to spur domestic travel and bring millions of international travelers to the United States. But without modernizing our travel infrastructure, we will not capture the full economic benefit of these events. President Trump's creation of the White House Task Force for the World Cup is a step in the right direction, but much more is necessary to ensure that our country can maximize the travel opportunity. To help meet these challenges, U.S. Travel developed a comprehensive blueprint for the future of American travel, focusing on the following key policy recommendations. Number one, we need greater government leadership. Travel needs dedicated leadership at the highest levels of government. We urge Congress and the administration to prioritize travel policy and create a sustainable model for overseeing travel improvements from end to end. Number two, we've got to address visa processing reform. Long delays in visitor visa processing hurts our ability to attract international visitors. We recommend providing full-strength consular staffing, extending visa validity for vetted lawful visitors, and establishing a national vetting service to lead visa processing. This will ensure the U.S. remains an attractive destination while maintaining strong national security. Number three, we've got to revolutionize TSA screening. Airport screening relies on inconsistent, unpleasant, and manual processes. We recommend immediately ending the diversion of the passenger security fee and increasing technology funding to place new identity verification, on-person screening, and baggage screening technology in every U.S. airport lane within the next 5 years. This will improve security, reduce wait times, and create a more seamless experience, allowing all travelers to carry water bottles and larger liquids, leave all electronics in their bags, and keep their shoes, jackets, and belts on their person. Finally, we've got to create a world-class customs process. We need to modernize the international arrival process for our guests. We recommend increasing CBP officer staffing at airports of entry while using biometric technology and enhanced traveler vetting to reduce processing times. This will allow the automated entry of trusted travelers and returning Americans while enabling CBP officers to focus their inspection efforts on unknown individuals. These 4 steps are critical to ensuring the U.S. remains a global leader in travel and that our infrastructure can handle the increasing demand. The status quo is not an option. Travel demand is growing, our infrastructure is aging, and global competitors are moving quickly. If we fail to act, we risk losing economic opportunities, diminishing America's competitive edge, and foregoing millions of foreign visitors. Thank you for your time and consideration. I look forward to answering any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Freeman. Now I recognize Mr. Gruen for 5 minutes to summarize his opening statement.
Good morning, Chairman Jimenez, Ranking Member McIver, and honorable members of the Transportation and Maritime Security Subcommittee. My name is John Gruen, and I am the Chief Executive Officer of Fortem Technologies. I'm grateful for the opportunity to testify today on the security of upcoming international events. Fortem was founded in 2016 to develop and produce the technology needed to defeat drones. We've become a global leader in drone detection and mitigation, focused on systems that can operate safely in the populated areas and in the national airspace. Our technology is currently deployed by CBP at the southern border, on U.S. military bases, and at critical infrastructure sites worldwide. Fortem also provided counter-drone solutions to the 2020 Olympic Games in Tokyo, the 2022 World Cup Games in Qatar, and the recent inauguration of President Trump here in D.C. Over the next decade, the United States will host multiple major international sporting events, and as we approach these global events, it is vital that we assess today's threat landscape and act now to lower the risk of incidents. As you are well aware, the occurrence of drone threats has surged in recent years, with the Department of Defense and Homeland Security reporting thousands of unauthorized drone incidents annually. Recent domestic drone incidents, like the collision with a firefighting aircraft in Los Angeles and one that halted an NFL playoff game, are warnings of what's to come if we don't act. Another example includes the incursion that occurred over Joint Base Langley Eustis in 2023, which triggered a month-long interagency attempt to deploy counter-drone assets to no avail. In this incident, standard detection and defeat systems failed, offering no advance warning of incoming drones or means to defeat what should have been considered a clear and present danger. This event highlighted a new category of threats we are facing: dark drones. Aircraft designed to evade detection by not emitting RF signals. To protect sensitive sites and large public gatherings, dark drone detection and kinetic mitigation must be the core of any successful counter-drone system. Thankfully, we do have the technology to defeat rogue drones before they cause harm. Companies like mine have developed AI-powered sensors necessary to identify the threats, including dark drones, as well as autonomous interceptor drones capable of safely taking down the threats. Our system intercepts drones with an aerial net capture system and tows them to predetermined locations, ensuring the safety of bystanders and allowing for forensics on the captured drone. As I mentioned, this technology has protected spectators at the World Cup, Olympics, and at other significant events before. We must field these defensive solutions at scale in the homeland now, as time is a critical aspect in fielding an effective counter-drone system. Based on our experience, counter-drone systems must start to be deployed 12 months before the event to allow time for system delivery, site analysis, and operational training. With the 2026 World Cup just over a year away, federal agencies must be given the tools and authorities they need, and local law enforcement must be empowered to respond to drone threats quickly and effectively. Currently, counter-drone authorities are spread across multiple agencies with delayed abilities to mitigate known threats. In the instance of a drone is detected and determined to be a danger, authorized federal personnel must be present and still request explicit clearance to take mitigation action. The chaos that ensued when drone activity disrupted flights at Newark Airport last year is a glaring example of our inability to respond to drone threats in real time. I commend this committee's thoughtful bipartisan work to resolve this challenge through H.R. 8610 last year and believe this bill should be passed swiftly in the new Congress. We need centralized, streamlined counter-drone processes now, and we must delegate mitigation authority to state and local law enforcement. Their involvement is critical for faster response and better security at a 12-plus city event like the World Cup, where federal resources will be stretched thin. Thank you, and I look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Gruen. I now recognize Dr. Kelley for 5 minutes to summarize his opening statements.
Chairman Jimenez, Ranking Member McIver, Chairman Green, Ranking Member Thompson, and members of the subcommittee. My name is Everett Kelley. I am the National President of the American Federation of Government Employees, AFGE, and on behalf of over 820,000 federal and DC government workers represented by my union, including more than 47,000 transportation security officers, I appreciate the opportunity to testify today. The decision by Secretary of Homeland Security, Kristi Noem, to unilaterally rescind the 2024 collective bargaining agreement between AFGE and the Transportation Security Administration has created an unprecedented crisis for TSOs at a time when our nation's aviation security system faces increasing demands. This decision undermines workforce stability and aviation security as we prepare for significant international events like America's 250th birthday next year and the Summer Olympic Games in 2028. Since 2011, AFGE has worked with TSA to establish a framework for genuine collective bargaining that balances aviation security needs with workers' rights. Our agreement has strengthened workplace policies while maintaining TSA's operational flexibilities. The 2024 CBA marked a significant milestone, providing long-term stability and predictable working conditions for TSOs while supporting TSA's mission. The abrupt termination of this agreement by Secretary Noem has dismantled years of progress. This action has left over 47,000 TSOs vulnerable to arbitrary management decisions, undermining morale and creating instability within the TSA's workforce. Secretary Noem's decision to rescind our CBA has created immediate uncertainty for TSOs who relied on this protection for predictable working conditions, and without established procedures for shift bidding, leave approval, or grievance resolution, TSOs face arbitrary decisions that undermine morale and job satisfaction. This instability will lead to higher turnover rates, a direct threat to aviation security as experienced officers leave their post. The timing could not be worse. Major interaction and international events will significantly increase travelers' volumes in the coming years, requiring a fully staffed and motivated workforce operating under standardized procedures. Workforce instability threatens screening consistencies and efficiencies during these critical periods when heightened security vigilance is essential. To address this crisis, Congress must take immediate action, and this is an ask. First, AFG urges Congress to pass legislation to codify collective bargaining rights for TSOs. AFG strongly support the rights for the TSA Workforce Act, H.R. 2086, introduced by Ranking Member Bennet Thompson. This bipartisan legislation will provide permanence to TSOs' labor rights under Title V of the U.S. Code, ensuring fair grievance procedures and Merit System Protection Board appeal rights. Congress needs to prioritize this legislation. Second, AFGE asks Congress to restore our rescinded collective bargaining agreement. Congress needs to pass legislation mandating the reinstatement of 2024 CBA immediately to restore stability to the TSA workforce. Finally, Congress needs to utilize the oversight authority. Congress must investigate Secretary Noem's decisions through public hearing that examine its legal basis and factual justification. DHS officials should be required to provide evidence supporting their claim against AFG while explaining how this action aligns with national security priorities. The decision to rescind the 2024 collective bargaining agreement represents an unprecedented attack on workers' rights that threatens aviation security in a critical time for our nation. TSOs perform vital functions in protecting America's transportation system. They deserve dignity, respect, and fair working conditions provided through binding agreements negotiated on their behalf. AFG remains committed to fighting for TSOs' rights while working with Congress to find solutions that balance labor protections with aviation security needs. So thank you for holding this hearing today, and I look forward to answering any question that you might have. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kelley. Members will be recognized in order of seniority for their 5 minutes of questioning, and I recognize myself for 5 minutes of questioning. Mr. Freeman, have we ever reached, I know that we had the pandemic, and then what was the highest year that we had international passengers in the United States?
The highest year for international travel was 2018. We have gone down or remained below that every year since. We, at the end of last year, were only at about 90% of where we were pre-pandemic. So the U.S. continues to struggle to welcome international visitors in the numbers we previously did. Visa, coming into this year, visa concerns, custom concerns were top reasons for that. We can't ignore the strength of the dollar. We can't ignore our economy versus others coming into this year. But the issues that were within our control were 500-day plus wait times to get an interview for a visa, multi-hour waits to get through customs. Both of those were big deterrents for foreign travelers.
Was that a reality before the Trump administration, or did that just happen in the last 60 days?
We've ebbed and flowed in terms of where we are on visa wait times. The lowest we've ever been was during the Obama administration, where all consulates around the world process visas in 2 weeks or less. That has ebbed and flowed ever since. There were successes during the Trump term. There were more struggles coming out of the pandemic. We have really struggled to get the consular officials we need around the world and to get these visa wait times down.
How do we end up with wait times of 2 weeks to 500 days? How did that happen?
And when you look at what happened post-pandemic or in the early days of the pandemic, all these foreign service officers came back home. They were slow to get back out to their consulates around the world. Processing visas is also the lowest rung on the totem pole of jobs within the foreign service officer community. It's not the most desired job out there. That's why we've recommended an alternative approach to doing this. If we want to get all wait times down to 30 days or less, which is something the United States of America should aspire to do, we need to take a new look at how we do this. These fees that foreign travelers pay can cover the cost of creating a new service that processes travelers. There's no need for foreign service officers to do this. There's a better way to do it. We think we could also use kind of emergency SWAT teams whenever wait times get high. We could send these officers or these officials into jurisdictions where they get high. The United States can be the most secure nation in the world and also the most efficient when it comes to processing travelers.
But we lack technology, we lack the manpower, and we have lacked the manpower and technology for some time in order to do that. And also probably policy, right?
I'm sorry?
Policy. Okay.
Manpower has been an enormous issue. Technology is an even bigger issue. I think the will to get it done is the largest issue. Right? Where is the goal, right? We don't have a goal when it comes to processing visas. At the end of the Biden administration, they established a goal of 90 days or less. If we achieved that goal, we would have still been last in the world when it comes to processing visas.
This was at the end of the Biden administration?
At the end of the November of the Biden administration. We need to have greater aspirations when it comes to how we welcome travelers into this country. They want to do nothing more than come here, spend their money, and go home and tell their family and friends what a great time they had.
So the Biden administration was in close to 4 years. Basically, right at the end of his administration, he decided, well, maybe we not have a 90-day period versus the 500-day period that some of these visas have taken?
There's no doubt that the wait times peaked coming out of COVID. There were steps taken. It was a little too late. We're hopeful we can find bipartisan support to be more efficient in the future.
Which, by the way, I agree that the passenger security fee that has been diverted for a number of years needs to be fully invested in TSA. And I don't believe that you're going to be paying for something. You're saying I'm paying a passenger security fee. It should be for passenger security. That's a novel concept, I think, here in the federal government. And I think that that can be said for administrations on both sides of the aisle. So I would hope, I know that one of my colleagues, Nick Lalola, had a bill to make sure that the passenger fee went to technology, et cetera, that we need at TSA, and I certainly support that. And I think we need to do more of that. The fact that we're not going to be upgrading our systems to the middle of 2040s, all right, that's totally unacceptable. Mr. Gruen, in terms of drones, and I only have about 30 seconds left, I found it interesting that you said that even if you put your technology, say, at all these stadiums, et cetera, to protect, that it would take a federal individual to say, go ahead and knock that drone out of the sky, that a local law enforcement could not make that call on its own to protect its own citizens?
Correct. The local law enforcement, state and local, do not have the current authorities. Even federal have it only authorized in temporary durations, and only certain agencies.
Fair enough, okay. Maybe I'll come back to a second round. With that, I yield back, and now I recognize the ranking member, the gentleman from New Jersey.
Thank you so much, Chairman. For many years, we all know that TSA experienced very high attrition rates among its frontline officers. AFGE worked for many years to advocate for better pay for TSOs to put them on the same pay scale as other federal workers and help address attrition. In 2023, when pay raises for TSOs finally went into effect, TSA's attrition rate dropped nearly half. President Kelley, with the Trump administration now trying to bust TSO's union, do you expect attrition rates to rise again? How would higher attrition rates affect the security of commercial travel as well as wait times at checkpoints?
Thank you for the question. I certainly think that it will affect attrition rates because, as we all know, that attrition rate went down more than half because there was a CBA, because there was adequate pay, because there was some rights for these employees on the job. They felt very secure, the morale was up, but now that they don't have a CBA, it was certainly, I expect, the attrition rate to go back to where it was or maybe even below it. Because they don't have any protection, they don't have any, morale is seen to be going down. As I travel the airports and talk to various ones, you know, we all see that. So I think that you will see it go completely south. I think that wait time will be the results of this attrition rates going back, because you're talking about now employee burnout, you know, and all these types of things that's going to happen that's going to affect wait time.
Thank you. Mr. Freeman, earlier this year, the press reported on the document listing options House Republicans are considering, including in their reconciliation bill. The document included proposals for increasing the passenger security fee, passengers pay on each airline ticket, and extending the diversion of fee collections away from TSA's budget to help fund tax cuts. What is the U.S. Travel Association's position on extending fee diversions away from TSA's budget?
TSA plays a critical role in the travel process. We value our partnership with TSA. We believe that TSA needs to better balance its funding between technology and staffing. To do that, it needs to maintain all of the resources it achieves through the transportation security fee. As the chairman said, none of that money should be diverted. It's a violation of every traveler that's out there who is expecting the contributions they're making when they buy that airline ticket to be supporting the travel process. And how we do that through both technology and staffing is a critical question.
Thank you for that. In my opening statement, I talked about the decrease in visitation from Canadians, and you talked a little bit about just the decrease and the differences in between travel currently right now. How will these reductions in Canadian visitors to the U.S. impact the travel industry and economy, in your opinion?
If indeed we have a decline in Canadian visitation, it will be significant in terms of the effect on our economy. A 10% decline in Canadian travelers would cost the market about $2 billion in spending. Canada is critical to the United States. It's critical that we send the message that we want Canadian visitors to come. We've seen tensions in the past between nations. That doesn't need to become a part of the travel process. We'd like to see that clear message right now that Canadians, Europeans, all travelers are encouraged to come to the United States. That message could be sent more loudly right now.
Thank you, Mr. Freeman. With that, I yield back.
Thank you, and I recognize the gentleman from Arizona, Mr. Crane.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a very important hearing today, talking about travel into the U.S. and some of the big events that we have coming up, like the Olympics and the World Cup. Mr. Freeman, I want to start with you. According to the U.S. Bureau of Transportation Statistics, TSA has either halted data collection or has overclassified information on prohibited items detected and seized by TSA since 2008. My concern that TSA purposely hasn't collected data or is overclassifying data to hide embarrassing statistics that show that they routinely fail what the industry calls covert tests. These tests are an event where an undercover operative from the agency tests security by attempting to smuggle prohibited items through TSA. In 2015, DHS OIG John Roth issued a scathing report highlighting under the Obama administration, the OIG found that 96% of instances TSA officers used Advanced Imaging Technology, or AIT, at 8 airports failed to detect hidden threat items. AIT is still in use today at U.S. airports by TSA. The agency doesn't have any data to suggest that these figures from 2015 have improved in 2025. I'm currently working with the chairman on drafting a bill that would require TSA to submit the results of all covert testing and/or red teaming testing to the Committee on Homeland Security, and I hope this bill can be bipartisan. My question, sir, and please answer briefly, with TSA's covert test failures coupled with the fact that the agency hasn't collected or submitted data on failed covert testing in recent years, how can Congress ensure that TSA is capable of handling incoming travelers from around the world for upcoming events like America's 250th birthday, the 2026 FIFA World Cup, and the 2028 Summer Olympics?
Thank you, Congressman. TSA's success is critical to all travelers. Travelers need confidence in their safety, in their security, or else they're simply not going to travel. So we share your concern with anything that would suggest that the process is anything but as safe and secure as it could be. TSA's accountability is to you, it's to Congress, it's to the traveling public. So we support your efforts to find ways to ensure that the technology, that the staffing levels are working in the ways that they need to work. I will point out that in recent years, while staffing has increased, spending on staffing has increased, spending on technology has decreased. The technology that is so desperately needed in the airports is not slated to get into the airports until the 2040s. We need to be more urgent about providing the best technology and as quickly as we can to TSA to ensure the safety and security of the traveling public.
Were you aware of that statistic that I read you, that under the Obama administration, OIG found that in 96%, the TSA officers using advanced image technology failed their test when employees from the TSA tried to smuggle weapons, bombs, knives, guns, etc., through their security checkpoints?
I was not aware of that specific statistic.
What do you think about that, sir?
It sounds like every day we've got work to do. We've got work to do to get better. We've got to make sure we've got the right training, we've got the right technology, we've got the right people in place. Security, safety is fundamental to people traveling. If people don't have that confidence, we will see a decline in travel. It's something that is of the utmost importance, and you certainly have our support.
What about you, Mr. Gruen? Were you aware of that?
I was not aware of that statistic.
What do you think about the fact that they're no longer reporting those numbers?
I mean, again, oversight and requiring an agency to do their job is essential to good governance.
Okay. Mr. Freeman, during the 2024 fourth annual Future of Travel Mobility Conference, you mentioned the need to grasp the opportunity right in front of us when talking about a decade of sporting events that will make the U.S. the most sought-after destination. Modernizing our TSA and travel processing procedures are included. My question is, please answer briefly, how should TSA and Congress look at the use of AI for passenger processing to scan faces and directly cross-reference international travelers with criminal databases?
It was at that same conference that I interviewed former TSA Administrator Pekoski, who demonstrated tremendous leadership during his time within TSA and partnership with the private sector. I think based on my experience with Administrator Pekoski, TSA was going down the right road in terms of what it looks at AI. We see enormous potential. The simple truth is that AI can detect things that the human eye will miss, and we see enormous potential in technology.
Thank you. I yield back.
Thank you, and I recognize the ranking member of the committee, the gentleman from Mississippi, Mr. Thompson.
Thank you so much. And I think it's interesting to respond that President Trump had nominated Mr. Petoskey to serve as the TSA administrator, and he was allowed a second term, but in the midst of it, he was fired. I think that's unfortunate. He had done a good job. And, I think he deserved a better departure ramp than what he received. Because from my vantage point, both Democrats and Republicans saw his vision for moving the agency forward. The other thing I'd like to say is that TSA and its workers and technology have managed a successful um, screening effort so that there's been nothing successful up to this point. That doesn't mean things hadn't gotten through. It just hadn't been successful. You can call it luck or whatever. But we also believe that technology is a force multiplier for security in all of this. There are only so many men and women we can put in airports and do what we do, other than that technology can't do a better job. It's unfortunate that we've had several opportunities to invest in more technology, and we've not had the kind of bipartisan support to finance that technology, but we have to do it. I look forward to doing it. One of the things we're talking about, the different events headed to this country in the not too distant future. So, Mr. Freeman, my concern is that are you or your organization aware of what the administration is doing in its screening protocols that are creating this discomfort? Have you seen anything in writing on those protocols or anything?
We've had discussions with Customs and Border Protection to understand what policies are in place, what, if any, policies have changed. My understanding is that policies have not changed, but media coverage has certainly increased. We're aware of that. We're aware of the concern that travelers have. We're concerned about anything that would discourage travelers from wanting to visit the United States. So just like with Canada, it's clear that we have work to do to get a message out that we seek these travelers. We want them bringing their spending here. We would be concerned about anything that would drive them to take their spending somewhere else.
So with that lack of clarity at this point, it is having an adverse impact on people coming to the U.S.
There is significant anecdotal evidence. I think we need to see the data. We're still waiting on the data from the Department of Commerce to better understand what is happening. But again, we're on our toes. We see the concern that's out there, and that leaves us obviously communicating to the administration and various agencies the need to provide travelers with the confidence that they desire.
Thank you. President Kelley, can you just describe for the committee the benefits of having a federalized workforce?
So many, really, when you think about it. Number one, they have a CBA, and that CBA was negotiated by Administrator Pekowski, who was appointed by President Trump. He negotiated a CBA that would bring about some stability inside of the workforce. Not only that, you're free of any form of striking, because if you had a private contractor, they can unionize and go on strike any day. The federal system cannot strike. Do not talk about going on strike. You talk about morale, high morale. We've already shown that attrition rate went down, about 50%, and we will continue to see attrition rates go down when you have a unionized federal workforce. And, you have flexibility, see it, and that's the thing about, that I like about the contract. It allows so much flexibility for the management to do what they need to do in the event of a crisis. So it is so many, it's insurmountable of the benefits that would be for this TSA.
Thank you very much. And, TSA, we created after 9/11 because the current protocol for screening virtually didn't exist before that. So it's the new kid on the block. We've been successful in not having, as I indicated, a successful person getting on a plane and causing that kind of crisis. But it's a work in progress. I mean, with technology, Mr. Gruen, we still have to continue to be as best we can. Our adversaries are constantly trying to figure out how they can beat the system. And in reality, it's technology that's going to catch them. So I look forward to continuing this discussion. And I yield back, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. We're going to go through a second round of questioning. I yield myself. 5 minutes for questioning. Mr. Freeman, you talked about the visa process and how we can accelerate that. Could you be a little bit more specific exactly what you're talking about in order to accelerate the visa process, take it down from 300 days to something a little bit more reasonable?
Yeah, there are multiple consulates around the world right now. Colombia is the best example where wait times exceed 500 days to get an interview for a visa. We've had similar wait times in India. In years past, we had wait times like that in Brazil, where they've been successful recently in bringing those wait times down. I think there are several elements to this. One, we simply have to establish a goal as a country. How well do we want to process visas regardless of what the demand may be? Once we establish that goal, what's the technique for getting there? Our proposal is to move things out of foreign service officers to create a new national vetting service where people apply for that job. They sign up for that job. That's what they want to do. Their job is to process visas. That those employees are paid for by the fees that travelers pay when they apply for visas. There's no additional cost to U.S. taxpayers. The key, though, is having individuals who actually desire to be in this role. It's what they signed up for. You don't get that today. You don't get that because you've got, again, people on the lowest rung of the totem pole. This is a job they don't want to do. In many parts around the world, they're only doing one shift a day. They work from, let's say 9 to 3, and the consulate closes. We've also got to get more creative in those situations. There are countries where we only have 4 or 5 consulates for countries as big as the United States. How do we get more creative in terms of how we then process those visas? Where does video conferencing come in? We've all learned the power and the limitations of video conferencing. How can that play a role when it comes to processing visas? Finally, when we look at the validity period of visas that are good for 6 months or 1 year, is it possible to make those visas good for 2 years? When we have travelers who have come here, abided by our rules, left on time, can we allow when their visa expires, can we allow rapid recertification of that visa? There are a number of things that we can follow through if we simply have the will to do it. We establish a goal, and we haven't, and I think this is a bipartisan challenge we've confronted. We just simply haven't had that zeal within the State Department or the leadership on Capitol Hill or in the White House to demand that from the State Department.
And if we did that, would you see an increase in travel?
Visas for the 45% of our travelers who are required to get a visa access is a bigger concern than the cost of travel. I think that tells us everything we need to know. It's not the cost of coming to the United States, it's the obstacle to getting the visa that is the biggest deterrent.
Fair enough. Now, in terms of technology, and Representative Gruen, brought out, a very good statistic, and it seems to me that technology has improved in the last 10 years, has to, right? Especially with the advent of artificial intelligence. Is there technology now that will self-identify threats and give cues to the TSA, individual on the screen that said, hey, you need to look at this, 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 and that. That would help, reduce that 96%. Is that technology available now?
There is significant technology available now that we're not using. Now, when you look at elements of the TSA screening process, there's the identity verification, there's the person screening, there's the baggage screening. I think we've done very well on the identity verification as we've moved to biometrics. I think we have a lot of work to do when it comes to the baggage and the on-person screening of individuals. That's where we have the greatest room for growth.
Do you have an estimate of how much that would cost?
I believe we've looked at a figure in the neighborhood of, I'm going to use the wrong figure, so I don't want to mention it. We do have that and are happy to give it to the committee.
Okay, and so if we stopped diverting the money, how fast could we implement these new technologies instead of 2040, which I think is a little bit too far out, 20 years from now, okay? And by then, we'll have something else, okay? So we need to get the technology right. It has to be modular so that as new technologies, come and it gets more and more, the technology just gets better, okay? That we need to be able to put that in as quickly as we can, not wait 20 years for that technology to be put in so that 20 years hence, there's something else, okay? So how much do you think we're going to need?
We believe it's reasonable that all of these reforms could take place within the next 5 years. This is not something we need to look at decades out. Within the next 5 years, we can give every American traveler the confidence they can keep the water in their bottle, their belt on their pants, their laptop in their bags.
Fair enough. All right, I yield back, and I recognize gentlelady from New Jersey.
Thank you, Chairman. I just have one follow-up question, and it's for Mr. Freeman. During your opening statement, even just now, you talked about the United States and how, if we want to be a global leader in travel, we need to do, X, Y, and Z. Do you currently consider the United States at the top of the list as a leader in global travel?
The United States is the world's most desired nation to visit. Around the world, this is where travelers want to come. We commissioned a report through Euromonitor about 18 months ago to rank countries based on their travel facilitation, based on their infrastructure, based on their national leadership. The U.S. finished 17th out of 18 countries. Only China finished behind the United States. You are seeing greater coordination, greater spending, greater zeal in countries like Saudi and other parts of the world that recognize just how important travel is to building their economy. And they also recognize that travel doesn't happen by accident. It takes a heck of a lot of coordination, it takes a heck of a lot of planning to make these things happen. Every one of us in this room today are travelers. We all know the hassles with the process. We all know the inefficiencies. We all go through this and look at various points and say, there's got to be a better way to do this. And the answer is there is. Do we have any desire to work together to implement those better ways? Because what we are dealing with today, whether at TSA, at customs, is not sustainable, and it's not something we should be tolerating.
And when was this report done?
This report was done and came out in early 2024. We're happy to get you a copy of that.
Yeah, I would love a copy of that. I just want to thank each of the witnesses for your testimony today and for coming to share with us. I know that this committee hearing is supposed to be about what we are, examining ourselves on the global level to prepare for these big events, but there's just lots going on right now that I think we really need to address before we can talk about being really prepared, being really prepared for all of the big events that we have coming up. So thank you so much for all of the information that you provided today. Oh, with that, I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
I want to thank the ranking member. Now I recognize the gentlelady from South Carolina, Ms. Biggs.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to the witnesses for being here today. As the United States gears up to welcome the world for the 2026 FIFA World Cup and the 2028 Olympic Games, our national travel infrastructure stands at a crucial juncture demanding comprehensive readiness. The influx of international visitors for these events will place unprecedented demands on our transportation networks and border security. The recent executive order signed by President Trump creating the World Cup Task Force signifies a critical recognition of the imperative for seamless interagency collaboration. This dedicated task force will be instrumental in strategically preparing our ports of entry, modernizing airport facilities and operations, and fortifying supporting systems such as customs and border protection, security protocols, and transportation logistics. So to Mr. Freeman, how should the World Cup Task Force prioritize its efforts to address operational challenges at our airports and our ports of entry?
Thank you for the question, Congresswoman. I think it's critical as the World Cup Task Force gets up and running that first we acknowledge we're already behind the 8 ball. The World Cup starts in about 15 months. Other countries are already planning, for the 2029 World Cup, the 2030 World Cup. That planning is already ahead of where we are. So we've got to acknowledge we're already behind the 8 ball. I have all the faith in the world in the local destinations that are hosting the World Cup. They have been coordinating. I think they're going to do a great job. The question really becomes in terms of getting people to the games, moving about the U.S. and moving into the United States. I think for the domestic traveler, we're going to see concerns when it comes to moving people through the airports. The demand that we're going to see is basically a Thanksgiving every day for about the 45 days of the World Cup. We all know what it's like traveling on the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. That's what we can expect. It begs the question, what are the things we can do to be more efficient during that period? And this task force is critical about aligning the Department of Homeland Security, the Department of Transportation, and other relevant agencies to ensure we can meet that demand. For the foreign travelers coming in, the truth is we're already too late for some of them. I mentioned the wait times for Colombians to get a visa. If they don't have their visa now for the World Cup in '26, their window is closed. That's shame on us, right? That's opportunity missed for the United States. And then we've got to identify what are the other markets where that window is already closing, and how do we process visas quickly in those markets so we can help those travelers get here. When we know they're coming, customs will be the final area where this task force has to work closely with DHS, with other elements of the government, to ensure that we don't have 2, 3, 4-hour wait times to get through Miami, to get through LAX, to get through JFK. That is a tremendous concern of ours. There is nothing more predictable than when a plane is going to land, how many people are on it, and who those people are. So there's no excuse to not be staffed appropriately to move these travelers through, and that's where the task force needs to be focused.
Thank you so much for your insight. My second question, Mr. Gruen, with major international events acting as high-profile targets for bad actors, how do you think the task force should integrate threat intelligence, interagency coordination, and emerging technologies like counter-USAS and AI-enabled surveillance into the strategic planning?
Thank you, Congresswoman. Your second point, technology needs to be procured and deployed now. So we recommend 12 months out from events to really get the technology on the ground, get the personnel trained, and run through different scenarios to mitigate threats. So we believe the task force needs to do that aspect. Part of that is also going to be authorities to enable local and state law enforcement to have the authorities to mitigate large threats such as drones when they're on the ground. So again, prioritizing that we are behind the power curve on this. We need the task force to prioritize the procurement and deployment of technologies and the training of personnel so that we have adequate protection.
Thank you so much. My time has expired, so I yield back.
Thank you. Now I recognize the gentleman from Arizona, Mr. Crane, for his second round of questioning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Gruen, I find your testimony and experience very interesting and important to this panel today. You're a former Navy SEAL, is that correct?
Yes, Congressman.
So you have a lot of background in unconventional warfare?
I do.
And now you're currently working in the counter-drone space?
Correct.
Have you spent any time overseas in Ukraine?
Yes.
Yep. Do you feel that Americans and our agencies understand the gravity of what's happening overseas and how it's transforming modern warfare?
Not at a scale that's necessary. There certainly are pockets of individuals who are aware of the threat and are working diligently to address it, but as a whole of nation, absolutely not.
Do you believe that the U.S. is prepared to protect its citizens and infrastructure from drone attacks in some of these major events that we're talking about coming up in the U.S.?
Not currently.
Give us an idea of what that could look like, sir.
The drone threat is so wide-ranging that it is hard to sometimes grasp, because you have the obvious situation of a stadium where you may have DJI-type drones come into the stadium, either drop powders or be explosive in themselves and do actual physical damage to the attendees. You also have a lot of other types of operational scenarios, like airports. With all these folks that are trying to arrive, if you have a drone that goes and parks itself on a runway, the entire operation is going to shut down. And it doesn't even have to explode. It can just sit there. And you have already disrupted air travel to a level that we have not seen, globally not prepared for.
Right. It's a lot easier to get some type of explosive into a stadium when a drone doesn't have to go through some magnetometer. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
It's really not that expensive either for our enemies to use drone warfare to attack us, is it?
Absolutely not.
Sir, you said, I believe in your testimony, that your company has been tasked to do counter-drone operations around key U.S. sites. Can you expound on that a little bit?
Yes, we are working with the Department of Defense to do some initial base deployments. So both OCONUS and CONUS, in particular in response to the New York, New Jersey drone threats at the end of last year. We're at Picatinny Arsenal now with an Army program of record, but we've also deployed to Stewart Air National Guard Base with a coalition of industry partners under NORTHCOM, and all to field the latest capabilities to really get both at the detection, identification aspect, and then have on-hand mitigation capability when authorized.
When you guys are doing these operations, are we talking about lone wolf bad actors? Are we talking about nation states that you guys are trying to prevent from flying over these sites?
The scary part about this, Congressman, is we don't have good fidelity on that information. We know that there are drones of various sizes, so ones that cannot be easily procured off of an Amazon or an Alibaba. You have larger drones, and you have drones, multiple drones at a time. So the fact that we don't know who's operating these drones is the real problem.
Are drones being used right now within the U.S. to conduct espionage?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Can you expound on that anymore?
There are briefings from the government themselves at different classification levels, but we know that there are other nation states or proxies that are operating near our borders and even particularly in the Homeland, different sites.
Most people probably aren't aware that the U.S. Capitol Police are currently using Tariff Regulation Section 16.2.90 model rockets and boats to mitigate drone threats on Capitol grounds. Congress must do its part to properly equip Capitol Police for that reason. On National Police Week, I plan to introduce the U.S. Capitol Police Empowerment Act of 2025 to authorize the U.S. Capitol Police to mitigate drone threats on the Capitol complex. The bill was drafted with input from the House Admin, Judiciary, Transportation and Infrastructure, and Homeland Security Committees. I'm hoping that everybody will support this bill as it should be bipartisan. I do have a video that I'd like to play of some of the drone capabilities from your company, Mr. Gruen. Now, Mr. Gruen, are we watching in real time your company's drones being able to shoot out nets and capture enemy drones?
Correct, Congressman.
Why is that so important, sir?
For the, we're called the low collateral effect interceptor inside government agencies, because the way by catching with a net, we either keep it under a tether and drop it somewhere that's been rendered safe, where law enforcement can look at the drone, get forensic, et cetera. So it's the collateral damage aspect. You're also not infringing on any publicly identifiable information. It's not hacking a signal. It's not getting personal information off of anything. So the combination of that, the lack of PII and the low collateral, is what makes it so impactful.
Mr. Chairman, I know my time has expired, but I'd like to enter into the record 5 separate articles.
Without objection, so ordered.
I've got number 1, U.S. Bureau of Transportation Statistics, prohibited items intercepted at airport screening checkpoints. Number 2, Defense Daily, TSA zone covert testing showed failures, DHS IG says. Number 3, ABC News, TSA fails most test in latest undercover operation at U.S. airports. Number 4, no drone zone, United States Capitol Police. And number 5, a copy of my bill, the USCP Empowerment Act of 2025.
So ordered. Gentleman's time has expired. I now recognize the gentlewoman from South Carolina for her second round of questioning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So TSA has made progress in deploying biometric screening, digital IDs, and automated security lanes, but outdated systems and workforce shortages still slow down those checkpoints. Republicans have long advocated for smart investments in innovative technologies that can improve the performance and reduce reliance on biological federal workforces. So, Mr. Freeman, given TSA's growing use of AI-driven threat detection and facial recognition, how far are we from replacing outdated manual processes at checkpoints with fully automated systems?
Thank you, Congresswoman. I think the first thing to acknowledge is what TSA has done well is give travelers around the country, no matter what airport they're at, a sense of not just security, but also a sense of consistency. The biggest thing that frustrates travelers is when you go through one airport, you have a different experience than when you go through another airport. TSA has ensured that we have that degree of consistency, and we applaud them for it. Some of that consistency includes exactly what you're talking about. We're already moving towards more of that automated system. We see some of that with the identity verification that's taking place. We see that with digital ID that happens and is working with the airlines, with Delta, United, with American. If you fly through Newark and Atlanta, some of these other major hubs, Detroit, you can go through the entire process just based on your facial biometrics. It's a wonderful experience. It's incredibly efficient. Travelers are moving through in 7 seconds or less using that technology. So I think we're already there. The question is, how quickly can we continue to build on this? How do we take it beyond the identity verification and use it for baggage screening, use it for individual screening? That's where there's so much more opportunity. There's opportunities for the private sector to work more closely with TSA to help realize some of these opportunities. You know, there's so much debate about privatized TSA, not privatized TSA. What there is a great opportunity for TSA, which has done some very good things, to work more closely with the private sector and really build a partnership here that can give the travelers the experience they desire.
Thank you. Just following up with that, are there successful models abroad that the U.S. should consider adapting to our aviation environment?
There are absolutely lessons learned in the UK and other parts of the world. In fact, the report that we put out earlier this year referenced some of those lessons learned in foreign markets. I don't think there's one market that is the panacea for what we need to do, but there's a combination of lessons learned throughout Europe and in other parts of the world. We're happy to bring those forward. We document several of those in our proposal. And I think sometimes the U.S. acts as if we're the first ones to confront these issues, as if we can't learn from some of our partners around the world. There's no need to reinvent the wheel here. There's some very good things that are done. Europe has made much further strides in terms of allowing people to bring liquids back onto planes, to keep some of their clothes on, their shoes and belts. We can learn from that, and we're hopeful that new TSA leadership will be willing to do that.
Thank you so much for your testimony, and I yield back.
Thank you to the gentlewoman from South Carolina. I want to thank the witnesses for their valuable testimony and also the members for their questions. The members of the subcommittee may have additional questions for the witnesses, and we would ask the witnesses to respond to these in writing. Pursuant to Committee Rule 7E, the hearing record will be held open for 10 days. Without objection, this subcommittee stands adjourned.